Tax the Churches. An excerpted essay from my book, Breaking Up with Jesus My Journey from Faith to Atheism. Available now on Amazon. Death, taxes, and childbirth. There's never any convenient time for any of them. Margaret Mitchell. In recent years, a contentious debate has continued to simmer around a deceptively simple question: should churches be subject to taxation? On one side are those who argue that religious organizations have become too politically active, too wealthy, and too institutionally powerful to remain exempt from the financial responsibilities borne by everyone else. On the other side are those who insist that taxing churches would somehow violate the separation of church and state, as though tax exemption were itself a sacred constitutional guarantee. Given the rather unambiguous title of this essay, my own position will not come as a surprise. I believe that the time has come to tax the hell out of them, not out of hostility towards private belief, but out of a commitment to fairness, accountability, and civic consistency. First and foremost, we have to be honest about the role that churches already play in American public life. They are not politically neutral bystanders hovering above the fray. They routinely guide their congregations, sometimes subtly, sometimes quite openly, on matters of political ideology, voting, legislation, and cultural conflict. Anyone who claims that American churches generally remain detached from politics either has not been paying attention or has not spent much time inside one lately. From the pulpit to the pews, messages are delivered that shape the political attitudes of millions. And if churches are willing to function as organized, influential forces in civic life, then it makes little sense to continue treating them as though they are somehow exempt from the ordinary obligations that accompany institutional power. Just as importantly, taxing churches need not violate the original principle of separating church and state. In fact, one could argue that broad tax exemptions for religious institutions create their own kind of favoritism. The First Amendment does not require the government to privilege religion financially. It requires the government not to establish or favor one religion over another. If all religious organizations were taxed under the same rules, then all would be treated equally under the law. No church would be singled out, no faith targeted, and no denomination elevated above another. The state would simply be recognizing religious institutions for what they are in practical terms: organized entities that operate within society, consume public resources, and should therefore contribute to the common system that sustains them. The consequences of not taxing religious organizations are not merely philosophical, they are material. Every year that these institutions remain exempt, enormous sums of potential public revenue are left on the table. That is money that could be directed towards schools, infrastructure, emergency services, public health, and countless other needs that affect everyone, including members of those same churches. If even a fraction of the wealth currently sheltered under religious tax exemptions were returned to the public coffers, the benefits could be substantial. Public education alone, chronically underfunded in many places, could be strengthened in ways that would ripple outward for generations. Better teacher pay, improved facilities, more learning resources, and stronger community investment are all easier to imagine when powerful institutions are no longer excused from helping fund the society that they depend on. Taxation could also serve another valuable purpose. It could place at least some limits on the grotesque accumulation of wealth by televangelists and religious profiteers who have turned faith into a business empire. While they would no doubt continue to live comfortably, they would at least be required to contribute something back to the society that makes their fortunes possible. Imagine funds that might go otherwise towards another luxury vehicle for Joe Olstein or another private jet for Kenneth Copeland being redirected instead towards feeding hungry children, repairing roads, or improving public schools. Even if taxation did not eliminate religious profiteering altogether, it could reduce some of the excesses and make the broader arrangement a little less obscene. So I say again that the time has come for religious organizations in the United States to be taxed. They have enjoyed a free ride for far too long, benefiting from public infrastructure, legal protections, and political influence while contributing little or nothing to the public treasury. This is not merely a call for financial reform, it is a call for fairness and accountability. Churches have amassed wealth and power for centuries or millennia without any meaningful obligation to give back to the civic order that sustains them. If they wish to function as influential institutions within society, with social, economic, and political reach, then they should be prepared to accept the same civic responsibilities expected of everyone else. What makes the current arrangement especially difficult to defend is the fiction that churches somehow stand apart from the systems that they benefit from. They do not. They rely on public roads, emergency responders, courts, utilities, legal protections, and the broader economic and civic infrastructure that every other institution depends on. Many of them also shape elections, influence policy debates, and exert enormous cultural pressure while remaining shielded from the kind of financial obligations imposed on other organizations with comparable reach. That is not neutrality in any meaningful sense. It is preferential treatment, and it undermines the basic fairness that tax policy is supposed to embody. Taxing churches would not amount to persecution, nor would it be an attack on religious liberty. People would remain entirely free to worship, gather, preach, donate, and believe whatever they like. What would change is simply that religious institutions, like other powerful institutions, would be expected to contribute materially to the common good, and that contribution could do genuine good, strengthening schools, repairing roads, supporting public services, and easing some of the financial burdens currently borne by everyone else. At the same time, taxation could help curb the excesses of those who hide ordinary profiteering behind sacred language and tax exempt status. In the end, the question is a simple one. Why should any institution be allowed to accumulate wealth, wield influence, and enjoy public benefits indefinitely without contributing to the system that makes all of that possible? I can see no convincing answer. If we are serious about equality under the law, then churches cannot remain a privileged exemption forever. They should not be above taxation any more than they are above criticism. It is time to stop pretending that exemption is sacred and start insisting that fairness applies to everyone. Let the churches pray if they wish, but let them pay too. If you enjoyed this essay, please consider purchasing the full book on Amazon.